Hi and welcome into the second part of the lesson how to use tactics in your games. After a study of this lesson, you will not just be aware of tactical motifs, but most importantly you will be able to use those tactical ideas regularly into your own practical games. I'm Igor Smirnov from Remote Chess Academy, and without further ado, let's get started. It's White's turn right now. Please think about the position for a second. What would be your initial impulse here? Which moves would you consider and play? There might be a couple of interesting possibilities. White can potentially move the knight somewhere, maybe knight f5 or something else, and try to strengthen the attack. However, there is an instant way to win the pawn. It starts from rook takes f7, which was played in the game, and the point is, after the exchange of the rooks, here white attacks the other knight on b8. Therefore, if black captures white's knight on f7, white will recapture his counterpart onto b8, and white ends up with an extra pawn. Therefore, it should be easily winning for white. In the actual game, black played knight to d7, but it doesn't matter. After knight g5, still white saves a couple of threats to black's king, and in addition to that, there is a strong passed pawn along the c-file, therefore it's winning for white. Okay, now let's take a few moves back and look at the starting position once again. This combination is pretty simple. Hopefully you were able to find it easily. At the same time, I want that you pay attention to the most critical thing. This is the fact that this combination starts from capturing something. This motif happens extremely often. I would even say that most of the combinations actually starts from capturing something. And that's the idea that I want you to remember and keep in mind while playing. When there is a position and you think about your attacking possibilities, you always need to check all available captures. Very often it will lead to something good for you. For instance, in this position, apart from rook takes f7, knight takes f7 is possible as well. In this case, white will still be threatening to grab the knight on the b8 on the next move. Although it's not that great, but for a second you may even think about a move like rook takes b8, another capture, and then following with knight takes f7 with similar motifs of attacking the b8 knight. In this position it's not that great, but anyway, you see that almost any possible capture in the starting position was pretty interesting for white and could possibly give you some material gain. The key takeaway for you is very simple. You always should check all available captures. Very often it will bring positive results to you. This rule also goes in conjunction with the previous one, which we learned in the first part of this lesson. That previous rule stated that you should focus on the opponent's territory and try to move there or make some damage to your opponent right there into his half of the board. In addition to that, you can check all the available captures. If you can grab any of the opponent's pieces on his territory, this can be very much beneficial for you. Now just keep focus on capturing something, and very often you will find interesting tactical possibilities. This motif happens extremely often, much more often than anything else. You may be wondering, does it mean that you always should think about captures? Does it mean that any combination will start from capturing something? Well, of course not. As you're probably aware, there are a couple of different tactical motifs. All of them happen from time to time. Now, I'm not saying that you should ignore any other possible tactical motif. For example, in this particular position, which we can see right now on the screen, this is my game against Varial Palagan, a well-known grandmaster. Here white has a couple of extra pawns, but black prepared some counter activity, threatening rook e1 mate or knight takes b2, but white can escape from those both threats very easily by playing rook to c7, inviting black's rook to come to that square, which enables the following fork, knight e6 check, and after that it helps white to trade the rooks. White still has 3 extra pawns, while the a6 pawn being attacked, and therefore it leads to an easily winning endgame for white. In this position we have seen another tactical motif. Here we tried it to deflect black's rook from protection of the e6 square, and also we may call it a decoy, which somewhat invited black's rook to come to the square where we want it to be placed on. At the same time, these type of combinations happens pretty seldom. Much more often, maybe in 90% of the cases, your combination will be starting from something much more powerful from the real capture. Hence, let's check some other examples. Here is another position. Please think about it. Which move would you consider here for white? Well, of course, the white's position is winning in any case. White has a huge material advantage, but nevertheless, you want to win as quickly as possible. And let me also remind you that these are my blitz games, meaning that in a blitz game you really need to finish the game quickly, otherwise you can simply run out of time, even if you have a superior position. I hope that now you can find the right move easily. You know that you need to focus your attention on captures. In this position there are not so many opportunities for white. White can grab the pawn on the h7, which is possible but not that much powerful. White can take with the rook on d6 or queen takes c7. These are the moves you need to consider first of all. And you need to check them quickly and see if one of them works or not. Here rook takes d6 works perfectly. It's not even a sacrifice, because after c takes d6 that will be made in one with queen to b7. Therefore black can't really take the rook. Instead he played somewhat creative move bishop to c4, trying to deflect white's queen from the 7th rank, or in case if white takes with a b pawn, black can start giving some checks with his queen, like queen to b4, queen to e1 and so forth. What do you think now about the position? How would you play here as white? Of course, you should use the same way of thinking. You need to check the available captures first of all. White has a very powerful move, rook takes c7. Oh, sorry, queen takes, and after rook takes c7, then rook d8, which leads to an immediate mate. Here black resigned, but you can easily understand the reason. After these forced moves, black's king got mated. Now we can see another example. This is a pretty standard position, which should be approximately equal. However, white missed the following tactical shot and played bishop to g5. Of course, if white player would be aware of this lesson which you are watching right now, he would not make such an annoying lapse with playing bishop g5. I hope that now you can find the black's tactical shot without any problems. There are not so many captures black can possibly make here. Maybe knight takes c4, bishop to f2, and rook takes c3. The first two moves doesn't make much sense, but rook takes c3 leads to the following fork after knight takes e4. Therefore, on the next move, black will take back the exchange. And these tactical complications ends up into black's favor. Black has the extra pawn, and then after the following moves, it was pretty easy for black to win the game later on. Once again, you can see that when you have the right focus, when you know what to think about, everything is getting very easy for you, and you can find very interesting tactical possibilities even in a blitz game, because you just need to spend maybe 1-2 seconds and that's all. let's test your skills one more time. It's white's turn here. What would you play here being white? Still, I hope that you can spot the right move without any problems. It's the move knight takes d5. After the recapture with the knight, then in the game white played bishop to e4. Alternatively, perhaps white could have played c4. Anyway, the idea is that using the pin on black's queen, you will take back the knight, winning the pawn during the process, which actually happened in the game, and it gives white a very advantageous position. This time the position is more complex. We have a lot of pieces on the board and many possibilities for white to be played. Anyway, please think about it and then decide which move do you think is the best. As you already know, we need to focus on the opponent's half of the board, and you also want to check different captures that you can possibly make. Here white has a couple of them. For example, white can take on d5 with the knight or the bishop. It definitely makes sense, because after that white can try to grab the bishop on the f6 and hopefully corrupt black's pawn structure. So knight takes d5 is one idea. Another idea is knight takes f6 straight away. Also, white can take on the h6 either with a knight or with a bishop, trying to expose opponent's king and then continue the attack against him. Those are the options that you need to think about and then choose which one works the best. Actually, almost all of these moves definitely make sense for white. Maybe only knight takes f6 straight away doesn't give too much for white, because it's only an exchange and there is no continuation for white, but any other move is pretty interesting. In the game I played bishop takes h6. Here after g takes, black's f6 knight lost his protection from the pawn, and that's why after knight takes d5, black experiences problems with that hanging bishop. The game continued with knight takes, bishop takes, and now due to that hanging bishop, black can't recapture onto d5. He has to retreat, which gives white the much better position thanks to his extra pawn and more active position and black's somewhat exposed king. Therefore I won the game later on. I think that probably white could have played even something else. Maybe that was even something more powerful, like white could have tried to take on the h6 and continue the attack then against opponent's king, for example knight takes h6 and then following with queen h3. Maybe, yeah, it should be even more powerful for white. Alternatively, if we go back to the starting position, white could possibly take on the h6 here and then continue with bishop takes h6, with similar ideas to bring the queen either to g3 or h3 on the next moves, with a very strong attack against black's king. What I mean to say here is that basically any capture that white has is very interesting, and even a few of them are good for white. Now still, if you keep focus on checking different captures, you will find a lot of good ideas. We have just observed various types of positions with different pawn structures, different plans, different types of the center, and in all of them this general guideline worked very well. That's the power of general principles. They are applicable for any position. Okay, now let's move on to another idea which can help you to bring out the tactical master inside of you. It is white to move. What do you think about it? What should be played here? Hopefully you can find the right move very quickly. This is the move rook to h7. It wins the game easily and instantly. Moreover, that's definitely the most effective way of continuing the attack. Otherwise, if white starts from bringing the queen to h2, it's not that effective because black can oppose his rook on the h file, so it leads to nothing. Instead, white should start from rook to h7 check, and then after king takes, white plays his battery of his queen and rook on the h file with a tempo, and there is nothing black can do about it. So the game continued with king g7, queen h6, and then rook h1, and black has no defense against either queen to h7 or queen h8 mate. So black resigned here. Well, in the actual game he played queen e3 check first and then resigned, but it doesn't matter. It was very easy for me to find this combination just because it's a very typical one. I have seen it before, and that's why I simply reproduced it during my game. I think I've played that move rook h7 instantly without any thinking. Here we come to the third powerful idea which can help you find tactical shots in your games. You need to learn typical tactical patterns. Finally, we came to the idea, the most renowned by the players. Again, coming back to what I said at the very beginning of the first part of this lesson, I'm not saying that you should not solve tactical puzzles. You may do that, just to mean that it's not the only thing you can do, and not even the most powerful thing. Nevertheless, when you solve tactical puzzles, or when you observe the games of strong players who played some interesting attacking games with tactical complications, you will definitely notice some typical combinations, typical positions of the pieces that can lead to a combination, and typical endings of the combinations. Certainly it will make it much easier for you to recognize those tactical patterns into your own games, and then to deliver this tactical shot which is already known for you. Therefore, you will not need to reinvent the wheel, you will just play the moves that you are already familiar with. This is another very standard combination. Hopefully you can find it in 1 second. Anyway, I'll give you little time to think about the position. When your opponent's king is stuck in the center, you may try to break through and start the attack straight away. It often starts from destroying the pawn cover, pawns on the f7 and e6. It starts from knight takes f7, following with queen takes e6. Now the black's king has to go forward, and therefore it should be very easy for white to continue the attack. After that, somehow I played g4. Rook e3 was also possible. I guess there could be several ways for white to proceed here. Black answered queen a5, trying to cover the 5th rank. I played d5. Again, I think there could be several ways for white here. Then the game continued rook e8, queen f5, but you see it's very easy for white because he has all the pieces very active, while black's king is always moving somewhere. It's under the fire of all of the white's pieces, that's why I don't even comment on these moves too much. After these moves, black resigned. It was easy for white, but most importantly, you need to recognize that typical tactical pattern which starts from knight takes f7, reaching out the black's king, pulling out the black's king to the center with your further attack against it. How would you play here for white? It's not a very typical idea, which happens in a lot of openings. Naturally, the f7 square is the weakest into the black's position. Only black's king protects it. Therefore, if you can attack it somehow, you have the great chances to win the game straight away, right at the early stage of the game. So here it also was pretty easy for me to find the combination. So I traded the pawns there to open the position further, and then took bishop takes f7, following with knight g5 check, and then knight to e6, which leads to material gains for white. because after queen e8 and knight takes c7, white will regain the material. Actually, white will win the exchange, and also some pawns during the process, which makes it easily winning for white. Again, this combination is very typical, and that's why it was very easy for me to find it. This combination with sacrificing your piece on the f7 happens in various openings, not only here. The idea can be either to use that fork of the knight, where it jumps to g5 and then to e6. Pretty often you can also continue the attack on the black's king, not aim at material gainings, but just continue the attack, play like queen d3, just trying to mate your opponent. So that's another idea. And another thing you can consider is that the black's king on the f file is very much vulnerable. So even if you just castle and then deliver the attack across that e file, it can also be very dangerous for black. All these ideas are very standard, they can work in various openings. So if you are familiar with this tactical motif, there is a great chance that sooner or later there will be an opportunity for you to realize this tactical shot into your game. Now you have another chance to test your skills, to see if you're well familiar with standard opening combinations. Can you find the right move here? This combination is very typical for Sicilian defense. It starts from bishop takes b5. Sometimes this is just an exchange of piece for 2 or 3 pawns, but very often it actually leads to a very strong attack against black's king. Here black can't really accept this sacrifice, because after knight takes b5 following with knight takes d6, white will develop the fatal deadly attack against black's king, and there is no chance for black to survive here. In the actual game, black didn't accept the sacrifice, he just played rook b8, but of course it can't really help. Black's position will be very bad after that anyway. This combination with bishop takes b5 happens in various lines of Sicilian defense. In Najdorf, for example, it may happen very often, and it definitely will work well for you if you really keep this in mind. Sometimes there is a big chance for you to utilize this tactical motif. Well, of course I can't show you all the standard combinations within this one short lesson, there are plenty of them. Anyway, let's take a look at one more example. Now let's test your skills one more time. In this position it's black to play. Black took and knight takes b3. Now what do you think about it? What should white play here? Actually, this might be a theoretical position, probably it should be. But frankly speaking, I'm not familiar with this particular variation, so I'm not sure what the theory suggests here. Probably it's not that great for black. Anyway, the position seems to be pretty complex. White can capture on the b3 either with a pawn or with a queen, or can try to attack on the king side with some sacrifices. Although it looks very complex, but it was easy for me, because here I detected one tactical pattern which I'm familiar with, and white can utilize this tactical motif by playing h takes g6. Now white is threatening queen to h5, therefore black has to react, and after h takes, white can play queen to g4. Again, initially it seems like the move like that will require a lot of calculation. Probably it's true, definitely it makes sense to check the lines here. But anyway, since that was the blitz game, I played this move almost unthinkingly, just because I knew the following tactical motif, which happened in the game. After knight to a1, white has a nice way to finish the game straight away, just in a few moves. It's not the move queen to h4, which is the most obvious, because after that black can play rook e8, then the king can escape, and it's not that easy for white to finish the game off. Instead, white can start from the move rook to h8. A little bit paradoxical move, which is a standard attacking measure. However, obviously if black takes with the king, then white will play queen h4 with check, delivering mate on the h7 on the next move. And therefore bishop takes h8 is forced, but it doesn't help anyway, because after queen h4 still there is nothing black can do. White is threatening queen to h7 mate, and this time black has no time for rook e8, because after queen h7 white will win the game anyway after queen h8 or maybe queen f7. That's a standard combination that you can realize across the h-file when you attack opponent's kingside castle, especially with that fianchetto bishop onto g7. You may really keep this combination in mind, and who knows, maybe you will use it in one of the game and will achieve a nice winning. Now let's draw the conclusions from this lesson. The first idea we've been talking about is about focusing on the opponent's territory. This means that the moves there are the most powerful, therefore you should keep the focus on the opponent's half of the board and try to move there. You can either inflict damage to your opponent straight away, or just advance your pieces, invade into opponent's territory. This will enable various tactical possibilities later on. That's the first key takeaway from this lesson. The second thing we have discussed today is to check captures. More often than not, a combination starts from capturing something. Therefore, if you check those moves which can grab the opponent's piece or pawn, you will very often detect something interesting. The third thing we analyzed is about an importance of knowing typical tactical patterns. When you study classical games, when you follow the games of good attacking players, when you solve tactical puzzles, you improve your awareness about the typical situations that can lead to combinations, and you will also learn the typical endings of the combinations. Then it will make it a lot easier for you to find such similar motifs into your own games, and then to exploit the combinations that you just know because you have seen them before. If you simply follow these three ideas and bring them into your games, it will help you a lot. It will help you not just being aware of the tactical motifs, which is true for a vast majority of players out there, but it will make you a practical player who can utilize tactical motifs into his own games, which is the most important. Then you will enjoy a lot of brilliant combinations and a lot of great defeats to your opponent. Thanks for watching. As usual, you're welcome to write your questions or comments below. They're very much appreciated. Talk to you next time. Goodbye.